My name is Harper Collins. I'm 30 years old. And the night my mother finally learned that silence can be more dangerous than anger started with her calling me ungrateful in a room full of people who had never once asked how I was doing. She stood at the head of a long oak table, crystal glasses glowing under chandelier light, and said it like a joke. Harper always needed extra help growing up. We did our best. The room laughed politely. Because that's what people do when someone powerful decides who you are. My younger brother smiled beside her, relaxed, confident, untouched by the weight of reality. He had always been the easy one. The one who didn't have to prove anything, because no one expected to carry anything. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, wearing a dress I barely had time to change into after a 12-hour shift at a hospital in downtown Chicago. My feet ached, my head pounded, but none of that compared to the quiet shift happening inside me. Because for the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was done. I looked at her and said, calm enough to confuse everyone at the table, then maybe you should ask him to start paying the mortgage. The laughter didn't fade. It snapped. My mother blinked slowly. Excuse me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I'm not sending money anymore. That was the moment everything changed. Not because of what I said, but because of what I didn't do afterward. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I didn't soften it to make her comfortable. I just sat there, watching the realization try and fail to reach her. Because she thought I was bluffing. She thought I would fold. She thought I would do what I had done my entire life, absorb the tension so she wouldn't have to feel it. I didn't. And when I finally stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out without another word, I knew something irreversible had already begun. I grew up in Evanston, just outside Chicago, in a house where appearances mattered more than truth. My mother, Victoria Collins, ran a boutique interior design firm that catered to wealthy clients who valued elegance over honesty. She knew how to curate a room, a table, a life, down to the smallest detail. My father had left when I was 17. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly disappeared into another life that required less responsibility. After that, everything shifted. My younger brother Mason became her focus, her investment, her future, and I became the solution, the reliable one, the one who understood. That word followed me everywhere. You understand, right, Harper? You understand why your brother needs help with rent. You understand why the business is slow this quarter. You understand why things are tight right now. Understanding became my job. At 24, I started sending money. At 25, I was covering utilities. At 26, I paid off a loan my mother insisted was temporary. At 27, I started tracking everything. Not because I planned to use it, but because something in me didn't trust the story anymore. The file on my laptop was called North. Simple, directional, easy to ignore. Inside it were folders by year, then by category. Mortgage support, medical bills, business bridges, Mason expenses, emergency transfers, each one documented, each one labeled, every wire confirmation, every receipt, every "I'll pay you back soon" message. I told myself it was just organization. It wasn't. It was evidence. That night after the dinner, I didn't cry. I went home, took off my heels, opened my laptop, and for the first time, I added everything up. 212,940. The number didn't feel dramatic. It felt precise, like a measurement of something I had refused to name. I called Lucas Reed, a former colleague from the hospital administration office, someone who understood systems, numbers, and the quiet ways things fall apart. He answered on the second ring. What happened? I told him everything. The dinner, the comment, the denial, the years. He didn't comfort me. He didn't say it would be okay. He said one thing. Stop tonight. So I did. I logged into every account I had quietly connected to theirs. Removed my backup authorizations. Canceled the automatic transfers. Disconnected the invisible support system I had built beneath their lives. I didn't take anything. I didn't touch what wasn't mine. I just stepped back and let gravity do what it always does. The next morning, my mother texted, "You embarrassed me last night." I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "No, I stopped protecting you." 3 days later, she called a family meeting. Sunday dinner, same table, same plates, same performance. But this time, I came prepared. Not with anger, with paper. She started immediately. "You've been acting irrationally." Mason nodded like he had been briefed. "You owe us an apology." I let her finish. Then I placed a single sheet of paper on the table and slid it toward her. A summary. Dates. Amounts. Destinations. Clean. Undeniable. She glanced at it casually, then stopped. Her fingers tightened. What is this? The part I'm willing to show you privately. Silence. Mason leaned over her shoulder. His face changed. Is this real? I didn't answer him. I looked at her. Say it again. Her voice was smaller now. What? That I never helped. She didn't. Because the truth has a weight that lies can't carry for long. I stood up before dessert. The next payment is yours. All of them. And I walked out. Monday morning, everything began to unravel. The mortgage payment didn't clear. The business account overdrafted. A vendor called asking about a delayed invoice. For the first time in years, problems reached them without passing through me first. My mother called at 9:12 a.m. What did you do? Nothing, I said. I stopped doing what you said I never did. What I didn't know then was that Lucas had noticed something else in the records. A pattern. Some of my transfers had been labeled internally as client advances in her business accounts, meaning she wasn't just accepting my help. She was repositioning it, using it to maintain an image of stability she didn't actually have. That's when it stopped being about disrespect and became something sharper. The turning point came 2 weeks later, her biggest event of the year, a private showcase for high-profile clients and investors, a room full of people who believed in her brand, her reputation, her version of reality. Lucas looked at me and said, if she lies there, you end it there. So I did something I had never done before. I prepared to tell the truth in public. That night, the showroom was flawless. Soft lighting, perfect arrangements, champagne flowing. My mother moved through the crowd like nothing had ever been wrong. Confident, controlled, untouchable, until she saw me and the binder in my hand. She didn't smile. She froze. During her speech, she thanked everyone for supporting a business built on integrity. That word again, integrity. I stood before she could sit down. Before we celebrate that, I said, you should correct something. The room turned. She didn't speak. So I did. You've told people you built this alone. I placed the binder on the table. You didn't. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Quiet. Page by page. Numbers. Dates. Truth. And then, please, she said softly. Not to me. To the room. Not like this. But it was already too late, because once people see something clearly, they can't unsee it. Within a month, her business lost 2 major clients. Within 3, it was downsized. Within 6, it was gone, not destroyed. Just unable to survive without the illusion I had been funding. She tried to come back. One evening, waiting outside my apartment. You made your point, she said. Not sorry, not regret, just finished. I looked at her and realized something simple. She still didn't understand. So I told her the only truth that mattered. It wasn't a point, it was the truth. A year later, my life looked completely different. I had a quiet apartment, a stable job, and a consulting partnership with Lucas, helping organizations find exactly what I once hid. Weakness, dependency, denial. I kept one page from the binder, not out of anger, out of clarity, because it reminded me of something I will never forget again. The most dangerous thing you can give people isn't your money, it's your silence. So tell me this, if the only time your family respected you was the moment you stopped saving them, would you ever go back? Or would you finally let them feel what your absence costs? 6 months after everything fell apart, I thought the story was over. Legally, it was. Financially, it was. But truth doesn't end when the numbers settle. That's when it starts collecting interest. The first sign came on a quiet Tuesday morning. I was at my desk reviewing a mid-sized logistics firm's internal audit, another company balancing on the edge of collapse without realizing it, when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Mason. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, not because I missed him, because silence had already done its job, and now I wanted to hear what came after. Harper, he said, voice tight, we need to talk. Not I need to apologize, not I was wrong, we need to talk. Some patterns don't break, they just change tone. I'm at work, I said evenly. It's important. I leaned back in my chair, eyes still on the spreadsheet in front of me. Important for who? A pause. Then quieter. For all of us. There it was again. The collective language that always somehow meant me. I agreed to meet him that evening. Not at my apartment. Not at his. Neutral ground. A small cafe near the river where no one knew us, where history couldn't sit down at the table before we did. He was already there when I arrived. No designer jacket, no careless confidence, just a man who looked like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. For a second, just a second, I saw the version of him I grew up with. Then he spoke, and it disappeared. "You didn't have to destroy everything," he said. No hello, no hesitation, just accusation. I sat down slowly, placed my bag beside me, and looked at him the way I look at numbers that don't add up. "Destroy?" I repeated. He leaned forward, frustration rising. "Mom, nothing, Harper. The business, the clients, people talk. Do you even care?" I let the question sit between us. Not because I didn't have an answer, because I wanted him to hear how it sounded. Finally, I said, "Did you?" He blinked. "What?" "Care when I was covering your rent, your car, your emergencies." His jaw tightened. "That's different." Of course it was. It always is when you're the one receiving instead of giving. He tried a different approach, softer this time. "She's not doing well," he said. "Mom." I didn't react. "She's under a lot of stress." I nodded once. "Yes," I said calmly. "That's what happens when responsibility arrives uninvited." His frustration snapped back. "You're cold." "No," I said. "I'm accurate." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said the one thing I had been waiting for, without even knowing I was waiting for it. "She said you owe her." I actually smiled, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. "For what?" I asked. "For everything she did for us growing up." There it was, the oldest debt in the world, the one parents present like a lifetime invoice. I leaned forward slightly. "And how much do I owe?" I asked. He hesitated, because numbers require specificity, and people like us had spent years avoiding that. "I don't know," he admitted. I nodded. "I do." I reached into my bag, not for the full binder, just one page, the same one I always carried now. I placed it on the table between us. He looked down, didn't touch it. $212,940. I said quietly, "That's what I gave." I tapped the page once. "Not estimated, not emotional, exact." He swallowed. "That's not the same thing." "Then explain the difference." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the numbers again, because this was the part no one ever prepared for, when feelings run out and facts take over. "She didn't ask for all of that," he said finally. I tilted my head slightly. "No?" He hesitated. "Well, not directly." "Indirectly then," I said. Another silence. Then I added, softer this time, "Do you know what the most expensive thing I ever paid for was?" He didn't answer. My own denial. The conversation ended the way most truth-based conversations do, not with resolution, with exhaustion. He left first, not angry anymore, just unsettled, like someone who had finally seen the full picture and realized there was no version of it where they were completely right. That night, I walked home along the river. Cold air, quiet streets, no expectations waiting for me on the other side of the door. And for the first time in a long time, I asked myself a question I had avoided. Not about them, about me. Would I ever let them back in? The answer didn't come immediately, because the truth is, forgiveness isn't about whether someone deserves it, it's about whether you can afford it. A week later, my mother sent a letter. Not a text, not a call, a letter. Handwritten, careful, measured, like everything she had ever done. I recognized the handwriting instantly, elegant, controlled, practiced. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my kitchen counter for 2 days, because urgency had always been her tool, and I was done responding on her timeline. When I finally opened it, I read it once. Then again, not because it was long, because it was precise. She didn't apologize, not directly. She acknowledged mistakes. She mentioned pressure. She spoke about family misunderstandings, and at the very end she wrote, "I hope one day you remember that everything I did was for you." I folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and set it down. Because that sentence told me everything I needed to know. She still believed the story. I didn't reply, not out of anger, out of clarity, because some people don't need a response. They need distance. Months passed, then a year. Then more. Life moved forward the way it does when you stop dragging the past behind you. The consultancy grew. Lucas and I took on bigger clients, more complex cases. Companies that looked stable from the outside but were quietly collapsing underneath. I became very good at spotting the signs. Not because I studied them, because I had lived them. And sometimes late at night, I would think about that dinner, that first sentence, that moment everything shifted. Not when I spoke, but when I stopped being afraid of what would happen if I did. People like to believe that strength looks loud, that it announces itself, that it fights. But the strongest thing I ever did wasn't raising my voice. It was removing my silence. So let me ask you something. If the people who hurt you never admit it, if they rewrite the story, soften the edges, pretend it wasn't that bad, do you still need their version of the truth? Or is yours enough to finally set you free?